The Flora Wonder Blog, Into the Maple Houses. After enduring a very long and brutal winter, we finally receive our reward with the emergence of new foliage on the maples. Is it raining? Cold and blustery outside? No problem. Let's head into the greenhouses where the indoor spring season is a couple of weeks ahead of the outdoors. Wow, not to brag, but there's no place on earth more beautiful than in the maple house in spring, and I especially like to be in them on a Sunday, when all is quiet and I'm all alone. But hey, you can come along with me this time, but keep quiet, please. The first maple to fully leaf out is Acer palmatum pinky, a wonderful cultivar that originated as a mutation on a seedling from Mikawa yatsubusa. Let me elaborate. We collected seed from Acer palmatum Mikawa yatsubusa, the one pictured above, and that is considered the mother tree, but we have no clue which tree was the pollinator. The seedling that germinated, as well as hundreds of others, displayed Mikawa yatsubusa type of leaves and growth habit, yet was slightly different in its own way. At about 5 years of age, an errant, congested branch appeared, sprouting from the lower portion of the Mikawa-like seedling. Did the pollen parent have anything to do with this? Anyway, we cut back to host, but not completely, to allow the mutation to prosper, but still for it to receive additional sustenance from some of the green host. Hopefully that was clear. We will observe the pinky for more years before passing it around, to be sure that it is not prone to reversion, and that it is free from other problems. It is most likely that our project will not pan out, as that's the way it usually goes. But it sure is cute at this point. I'll point out that the mutation, or broom, leaves out before the host, and that is typical. For example, last week I walked past the Acer circinatum broom, Hoyt, at Portland's Hoyt Arboretum. It was half in leaf, but the mother host was showing no new growth. Guess which drops its leaves first in autumn? While we're on brooms, how about the cultivar Acer palmatum Little Sango? It originated as a witch's broom on an otherwise normal Acer palmatum Sango kaku. I'll confess that my name is not Hoyle, that one should not combine the English word little with Sango, the Japanese name for coral. It was just a generic tag that I initially gave the broom, but we did publish the labels, and before I knew it, a good customer saw my crop and wanted some. And there you go. Talon Buckles, who's normally very careful with plant names, did commit an international nomenclatural infraction. Another witch's broom mutation, possibly the tiniest of all cultivated vine maple selections, is Acer circinatum baby buttons. So far I conclude that it grows at less than half the rate, maybe much less than the old geezer Little Gem. Found years ago as a witch's broom in Stanley Park in Vancouver, British Columbia. By the way, my oldest Little Gem is planted in the Flora Wonder Arboretum's Blue Forest, and at 32 years of age, it is 7 feet tall by 10 feet wide. If you look into the interior of Little Gem, its stem caliper is at least 4 times the size of its palmatum rootstock. As with other circinatum dwarves, baby buttons will exhibit enthusiastic shoots when grown in a container, and especially when residing in a greenhouse. I estimate that its growth rate will be about 20 inches tall by 20 inches wide in 10 years if planted out. Unfortunately, in my garden, baby buttons has never displayed outstanding fall color, something that the circinatum species is noted for. It is usually a dull, crappy yellow with brown leaf edges, but then, that's how Little Gem is frequently colored. Hopefully, someone in the future can report more colorful autumn foliage for baby buttons. A fantastic Japanese maple of seedling origin is Acer palmatum eye candy, and I propose that it is more spectacular than its mother parent, Acer palmatum alpenwise. A Bob Balzer introduction that he and I both conclude is more colorful than alpenwise's mother, Higiasama. How about that for horticulture? Grandma Higiasama is widely admired, but daughter Elpenwise is perhaps better, more colorful, but grandchild eye candy surpasses them both. We'll never know the pollinators involved with any of these three cultivars, but imagine the dazzling progeny that might arise from eye candy. I have introduced a number of Acer Shirasawanum cultivars, but they are of all questionable parentage, and I suspect that some, or all of them, contain palmatum blood. Acer palmatum can easily interbreed with Acer Shirasawanum, and the offspring are then just what? In an open garden setting, such as exists at the Flora Wonder Arboretum, one never knows exactly what is commingling with what. In the case of the Shirasawanum/palmatums, I define the progeny to be Shirasawanum if the seed arises above the foliage, and palmatum if it drops below. Anyway, with the myriad of palmatum Shirasawanum hybrids, we have Red Dawn, Shira Red, Yasmin, Myrte, and many others. I have decided to use a species name rather than to indicate for an X for a cross, and that is because I'm not positive that the subject is indeed a hybrid. For example, is Yasmin truly a palmatum, or is it purely Shirasawanum, or is it a hybrid? Whichever way the seed hangs, it is half and half. Or is it 3/4, 1 1/4 of each other? How should my introductions of Johine, Kawaii, and Green Snowflake be classified? With the seed up, I consider them to be Shirasawanums. I have posed this question for years, but to date no scientific or empirically oriented white lab coat expert has ever taken it on. I understand that the reader might ask, whatever, who cares? Fair question. But I'll remind you that the Shirasawanum species is considered one full zone more cold-hardy than the palmatum, so that the cultivar in question might survive a nasty winter with the Shira blood over its predominantly palmatum brethren. We grow a modest number each of hundreds of cultivars, and if we only propagate 25 of some of the obscure ones per year, then that's plenty. Greenhouse 10 is filled with a couple of hundred cultivars, some well-known and some not. I like the lesser-known, the underdogs, and in spring you can see why they were originally selected. Acer palmatum Chitozeyama is one such obscurity, but its unusual brown-green new growth makes it noticeable in spring. It will never be anybody's favorite cultivar, but you can understand how the discoverer up on Mount Chihose perhaps was intrigued by the unique color, but it will form a mounding bush, about as wide as tall, and its arching branchlets give it a pendulous look. Fall color, for me, is a brown red to brick red. Chihoseyama is probably number 873 on my list of most favorite palmatum cultivars, but nevertheless, I was impressed when I walked past a small group today. Also impressive was a few of the weak freak selections that are not strong growing, and one certainly not suitable for the average gardener, but maples that certainly dazzle you in the early spring. I am unable to distinguish 3 of these without their labels. Acer palmatums Shinhikasa, Abigail Rose, and Squiddy are all problematic dwarves, but they can display small leaves with pink, white, and green portions in a striped pattern. In other words, you can have a dwarf, Elpenwise, or eye candy. In my experience, these 3 are absolutely amazing now. Then the leaves will burn or wilt on the first hot day in June, and then you will actually consider to throw them out. But vigorous new growth will burst out in the late summer, though not so colorful, but at least you are assured that your little mutants have survived. Shin in Japanese is new or improved, while Hikasa is sunshade or parasol. I don't get the meaning at all, but sometimes the Japanese letters G and K are interchanged, as in Kawa and Gawa, and it has been explained to me that the Japanese will select one over the other simply because it sounds better to them. I wonder then, if Shin Hikasa means a new or improved Higasa, as in Higie-sama, as the leaves on each cultivar can be similar. I only speculate on this, and I could be way off. I do know that Abigail Rose and Squiddy were sister seedlings, but from what mother tree I do not know. Both originated from the late Harold Johnson of Alabama. He named one of the seedlings Abigail Rose for his granddaughter and sent the sister to me to try, as he put it, but warned me that it was just a squiddy little thing. So I grew my seedling and eventually propagated and named it Squiddy, which I took to mean tiny, little crappy thing, or something like that. In any case, the two sisters are practically identical, and I grow both, not for profit, but really just to honor the generous Mr. J. He was a guy who, in his 80s, would send me a couple of Ziploc bags of shelled pecans that he hand-cracked himself. I regret, I really do, that I didn't set aside the time to visit old Harold in Alabama, to visit him in his old rocking chair on his porch, and to thank him for his support of my career. Mr. Johnson died a few years ago, but I, and all of you readers, have continued. One day, just shortly before his death, Harold called me about something. Acer. But before his question, I asked, "How you doing?" He didn't reply. Fine, as we all normally do, but instead said, well, not so good. We grow another Johnston maple, Acer palmatum Johnny's Pink. It is an upright tree that will eventually develop a broad canopy. Leaves are bright pink in spring and then evolve to green red in summer. It's an interesting tree, but we don't sell too many of them. Johnny's Pink competes in popularity with other fairly new cultivars such as Hinotori Nishiki, which means firebird in Japanese, Phoenix, the palmatum, not the conspicuum species, Kawahara Rose, and others. Harold Johnson's most famous maple introduction was probably Acer palmatum Benny Shien, which translates into Japanese as red smoke. It was discovered as a mutation on an Acer palmatum Atropurpureum. Unfortunately, it is prone to reversion, so any atypical shoot should be removed. It's a frequent problem in horticulture that mutations have an urge to go back to what they once were, such as the tendency for the dwarf Alberta spruce to put out larger branches typical of the Picea glauca species. Vertrees Gregory suggests that Benny Shien ultimately grows up to 20 foot tall, but in the original display garden I have a 17-year-old specimen that is already 20 foot tall. Stand back if you garden in Oregon. A final maple that I'll discuss is Acer palmatum corallinum, and that is because our huge specimen near the office caught the eye of Michael Steinhardt of New York, and he bought it for his Mount Kisco garden for an offer that I couldn't refuse. So sayonara, adios, but someday I'll journey back there for a reunion. Often my own staff will gasp when I agree to part with my favorite, venerable old tree, like I run some independently wealthy tree museum. But the corallinum, the largest one that I have seen, grew quite large, and it was too close to the road. At least now I won't lose it to one of the bozo truck drivers that we get around here. If you are a specialty nursery or boutique garden center wanting the rare and exceptional plants your customers love, register as a wholesale customer on buckoltznursery.com today.